Good morning and welcome. This is what we call our listening experience. It's a chance for you to get to hear music from different time periods and different styles, something maybe you've not experienced before. Some of these you may really like and want to listen to more of it. Some of them you may really not like, but now you'll at least have an informed opinion. We'll do one of these every week, each semester. This semester, we're going through music history chronologically. And we're going to start with music of the medieval time, Dark Ages, then into Renaissance music, and we'll finish up with some Baroque music. So it just has to do with the timeline. Some characteristics of medieval music that we're going to start with. Monophonic, meaning one sound. Okay, later on, you get into polyphony, which is many voices, but the way it started was just one. And they did them pretty much exclusively in the Roman Catholic Church. That's where this started. So they used the sounds they called modes, and it's kind of what we think of as major scales, but starting on a different note. We'll get some more of that later. Rhythmically, it's not very complicated. The rhythms were based on the words. So it's chanting pretty much, but in time. But there wasn't a specific meter. And then you had larger groups like a choir singing all in unison, usually like monks. And then you had smaller groups, which would be a single singer. We'll hear that in a couple of weeks about troubadours and people singing motets and things like that. And then there were, towards the end of the Dark Ages, they started bringing instruments into the mix. So we'll hear some of that. The first thing we're going to look at is called Gregorian Chant. And when you hear Gregorian Chant, you only hear one single voice line. It's many people singing together, usually a choir of monks, all men. But they're only singing one single line. There is no instrumental accompanist with any true Gregorian chant. Sometimes they called it plain song. And traditionally it was always sung by men. Women were not allowed to do that, not yet. Sung in Latin, because that was the language of the church, and according to Church with a big C, the only people allowed to talk to God were the clergy or the priests, and the general masses of people kind of just had to wallow in silence and, wonder, because they couldn't speak Latin, so, they didn't know what they were saying. This was originally exclusively Roman Catholic. That's where it started, so they kind of have some ownership of it. Under the reign of Pope Gregory is when they started this kind of singing. So, of course, he gets the credit for it, which is why it's called Gregorian Chant. He didn't create it, but he was just, he was driving the boat when it happened, so he gets all the glory. This type of singing is usually done in unison. There's no harmony going on at all. It's just unison, everyone singing the same pitch and the same octave. And like I mentioned earlier, it's sometimes called plain chant. So if that comes up on Trivial Pursuit, you'll now get that question right. The kind of notation that you see here on the screen, you have these different kind of little boxes and slides, and notice there's only 4 lines on there. This is called pneumatic, N-E-U-M-E-S. Neumes are this kind of musical notation. Later on, it transfers into what we know as eighth notes and quarter notes and all that, but not yet. At this point in time, it was not yet standardized, so everyone kind of had their own way of doing it. It's very colorful, too. Okay, here is a recording of Puer Natus est Nobis. All right, so that's a little bit of Gregorian chant. If you really liked that, I can hook you up with a lot more of it. If you really didn't like that, you don't really have to listen to it ever again. But now you're aware that it exists. All right, next week we will look at a different kind of music called polyphony.